Excelencias, invitados de honor, damas y caballeros, muchas gracias por unirse a esta celebración. Hoy es el aniversario 123 de la independencia de Filipinas, tras más de 300 años de dominio colonial español. La Revolución Filipina creó la primera república de Asia. Junto con la libertad y la independencia llegó un nuevo desafío, el de construir una vida pacífica, productiva y próspera para todos. A lo largo de los años, nuestros esfuerzos dieron resultados prometedores. Filipinas era una economía que más rápido crecía en el mundo hasta la pandemia de COVID. Como en muchos otros países, su impacto en nuestra economía y en nuestra forma de vida fue considerable y continúa siendo un serio desafío. A pesar de las dificultades que hemos enfrentado, la pandemia nos ha recordado la importancia de permanecer unidos como un pueblo. Si la pandemia nos deja alguna enseñanza positiva, es que cada uno de nosotros puede hacer su parte agregando su granito de arena para construir una comunidad más fuerte, compasiva y que cuida a sus miembros. Quisiera contarles acerca de un importante ejemplo del fuerte espíritu de comunidad mostrado por nuestra gente en medio del hambre y la pobreza. Mientras el gobierno se enfrentaba a la desafiante tarea de proveer a las necesidades de quienes perdieron su sustento y luchaban para alimentar a sus familias, una joven mujer con fuerte espíritu cívico tomó la iniciativa de organizar una alacena comunitaria donde la gente dona alimentos para que sean distribuidos gratuitamente a las personas más necesitadas. Los donantes se apuraron a donar comida y dinero para ayudar a otras personas en sus barrios. Otros donaron su tiempo y talento para ayudar a la distribución ordenada de los bienes donados. Este acto desinteresado de generosidad y de parte de una sola persona unió a toda la comunidad, tomó la atención de los medios y en muy poco tiempo la alacena comunitaria se convirtió en un movimiento nacional que se está esparciendo incluso a otros países. Ahora hay más de 1,600 alacenas en el país desde la apertura de la primera en abril de este año. También quería traer su atención a los incontables actos de generosidad de nuestros trabajadores médicos, especialmente nuestras enfermeras, quienes en muchas partes del mundo están al frente de la batalla contra el COVID. Muchos se enfermaron, muchos perdieron sus vidas, muchos continúan trabajando con dedicación, con poca preocupación por el bienestar propio. También agradecemos a nuestras comunidades de filipinos en Latinoamérica su voluntad de hacer todo lo que pueden para ayudar a los filipinos afectados por el COVID. Estamos orgullosos de que los valores y el espíritu de comunidad que han pasado de generación en generación sigan siendo parte de nuestra identidad nacional y hayan hecho que nuestra gente sea más resiliente a los desafíos y problemas. Mientras el ritmo de la vacunación aumenta y la investigación y el desarrollo científico continúa para luchar contra esta pandemia, aquellas que vengan en el futuro, esperamos que nuestras economías puedan recuperarse rápidamente y nuestra gente volver a su vida normal, aunque sea una nueva normalidad. Aprendiendo de las lecciones de la pandemia, el gobierno filipino se está preparando para una recuperación post-pandemia, implementando un sistema de salud universal, reforzando el sistema de salud público con atención a la seguridad en la comida, reforzando la economía digital, maximizando la conectividad en el país y realizando reformas económicas para que el país sea más competitivo en un mercado global abierto. Agradecemos a nuestros compañeros y amigos de la comunidad internacional que nos están ayudando en este difícil periodo y esperamos continuar con renovada y revitalizada cooperación con ellos para que volvamos a ponernos de pie. Estamos muy felices de que a pesar de las limitaciones del contacto físico, nuestras relaciones bilaterales con Argentina continúan siendo muy buenas. Bienvenidos son los resultados de la cuarta consulta bilateral en mayo, donde acordamos avanzar de nuevas direcciones en nuestras relaciones futuras. Ahora me gustaría dirigirme a mis conciudadanos Filipinos en Tagalog. Nais kong batiin at pasalamatan ang ating mga kababayan sa Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, Uruguay at sa iba't ibang ibayo ng Latin America sa inyong pagdalo sa pagdiriwang ng ating Araw ng Kalayaan. Naway palagi nating alalahanin na ang bawat isa sa atin ay may katungkulang paigtingin ang diwa ng pagkakaisa at pamayanan para sa ikauunlad ng ating bansa. Nais ko ring pasalamatan ang ating mga kababayan sa kanilang tulong sa mga napinsala sa COVID. Naway kayo ay manatiling ligtas sa mga panahong ito. Les agradezco nuevamente por compartir con nosotros la celebración del Día de la Independencia de Filipinas. Maraming salamat po.
I joined the entire Filipino nation in celebrating the 123rd anniversary of the Proclamation of the Philippine independence. The challenges of the past years have tested our character as a nation. Each of us have been called upon to be heroes in our own right, in fighting for our survival and devoting ourselves to the common good, just as our heroes did more than a century ago. With their noble example inspiring us, we look forward to a brighter future, filled with hope that we will overcome the challenges brought by this pandemic. May the patriotic fervor continue to burn in our hearts. Mabuhay ang malayang Pilipinas.
I convey my warmest greetings to all Filipinos overseas as we celebrate the 123rd anniversary of the Declaration of Philippine Independence. I recall back in 2018, when I was in New York, we celebrated this special event with our iconic Independence Day parade along Madison Avenue. Tens of thousands of Filipinos flocked to Manhattan to be part of this Fiesta Grande, and we danced the day away. Wherever Filipinos may be in the world, in New York, London, Dubai, Melbourne, Tokyo, Egypt, and many other places, June 12 will always be our special day. We get together, eat Filipino food, indulge in familiar joys, Pinoy music, art, film, dance, stories that for a day take us back home. As the one thing Filipinos look forward to every year, surely this was one of the top things sorely missed last year because of the pandemic. This year, celebrations will be subdued as we have just started to cross the threshold from isolation to vaccination. The theme of Kalayaan 2021, Spirit of freedom in unity and national healing cannot be more appropriate. Vaccinations have progressed all over the world, including in the Philippines. We have surpassed the 1 million mark of fully vaccinated people. We are cautiously optimistic that as the numbers of the vaccinated continue to increase, so infections and casualties will decline. During this pandemic, the Filipino diaspora has contributed much to the world in keeping besieged healthcare systems afloat, especially in the most advanced countries, in manning maritime vessels key to trade and commerce, and in running critical infrastructure of many countries. I commend Filipino frontliners abroad for doing what they are best known for: selfless service and gentle nurture, so desperately needed in these terrible times. Our healthcare workers are our best and most credible ambassadors of goodwill, beside whom even diplomats pale. They don't just avow saving lives, they do it. The Filipinos' dominant global helping presence single-handedly vindicated our push for receiving countries to adopt the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. I was there in the United Nations when some countries expressed reservations over the Global Compact. Many of these countries now see the Filipino as essential to their recovery. They cannot heal without you. The global Filipino has redefined to a higher level what it means to be an essential worker. I cannot convey enough of my deep respect for you. Our esteem will always go hand in hand with our commitment to extend fast, responsive, and quality service through our embassies, missions, and consulates abroad. Our repatriation efforts in this pandemic, which started with teams going to Wuhan, continue to this day. No matter where you are, if you are in grave risk, you can count on the DFA to leave no one behind. That is our blood compact with overseas Filipinos. If we have to suture our cell phones to our ears and our fingers to the keyboard, as we heal together, let us celebrate our nationhood together. I cannot say for certain that normalcy will be completely restored, but I believe that down the dark tunnel, the global situation will improve, and the Filipino diaspora is part of the light at the end of it. Pandemic or not, this is the best time to be Filipino. Mabuhay!
In a world so changed and so in need of wholeness and healing, where might we find the strength and the values that will steer us through these times? The answer lies in our roots and in the values and culture of the indigenous peoples. Their stories of survival, of respect for nature, of love for the environment, their fierce dedication to the land that gives them life, may yet show us the way to wholeness, healing, and survival. Listen to the voices of those who have gone far beyond their homes and villages. While they may have charted their own courses all over the world, their souls remain rooted firmly in the culture of their forebears.
I remember when my mother's side of my family speaks Tausug and my father's side of family speaks Yakan. I do remember one thing in my childhood, that is, the community. Being raised in an IP community means living in a very big community. Everyone are brothers and sisters. helping each other to cope up with each one's hardships and also laughing with each blessings. As a visionary person, I utilize being an IP to advance Filipino culture and to promote our indigenous languages. I appeared on numerous Korean dramas and movies not only as an actor, but an advocate of our indigenous languages. Look at those famous Korean actors speaking Tausug and Yakan on Netflix. That's something that everyone can be proud of.
Today we see a world struggling to survive a pandemic and conquer many other fears as well. The pandemic, invasion, war, all these have drawn barriers that separate races, communities, individuals. In this changed world, we live in a state of increasing separation and isolation. It was not always like this in the archipelago of islands that is the Philippines. What lessons can we draw from our pre-colonial Filipinos who looked outward to new worlds and influences while maintaining the strength of their own communities? Before there was a Philippines, before the Spanish united the archipelago into one colony, there were the island kingdoms, independent and culturally unique, linked by common bonds to the Austronesian migration and its shared heritage. These kingdoms were connected to a larger world. The world of island Southeast Asia itself, a network of island kingdoms, as well as the world of Asia's great empires. The pre-colonial culture of the Philippines was enriched by trade. To the shores of the island kingdoms came merchants and seafarers, all who brought with them the wealth of their own kingdoms, to be bartered for the rich resources of the islands. With trade came social and political connections, as well as influences that shaped the many facets of life. Religion, literacy, diplomacy, and culture. There may not yet have been a country we know today as the Philippines, but our ancestors gave us the very traits we share today as Filipinos. Our openness and curiosity, our acceptance and fluid integration of cultural influence, our welcoming spirit, our ability to integrate with others while retaining our sense of who we are. Pre-colonial Filipinos gave generously to those who came as friends and partners, gathering resources and wealth, as well as influences and interactions, interweaving all these threads into the rich tapestry of culture that we are still discovering today. in a precarious time, when geographic disputes threaten the security of our nation. The open seas, which once were traversed so freely by our ancestors, have now become an endangered patrimony. All over the world, the resources of oceans, forests, and mountains have become not vital resources to be conserved, but to be exploited and abused. What can we learn from our indigenous peoples about the respect and protection that have always been a part of their animists' lives? The indigenous peoples of the Philippines share a common heritage with our pre-colonial ancestors, as well as with all the native peoples of the world. Nature is the force that they respect, protect, and nurture. The environment is a source of life that must be conserved and guarded. The harvests and agricultural cycles so lovingly continued and preserved, the fruits of forests and jungles so judiciously gathered, the wealth of lakes and open seas. All these the indigenous have never taken for granted. These gifts of the earth have not only sustained life, they have enriched spirituality and belief systems, inspired works of both tangible and intangible heritage, now shared and recognized as legacies for all mankind. And when the modern world had encroached on their ancestral land, the indigenous peoples have valiantly defended their rights, many times with their lives. In the face of marginalization and militarization, poverty and exclusion, they cling firmly to this ethic. Stewardship of the earth, not ownership, has allowed them to survive. The wisdom of the indigenous was best expressed by Makliing Dulag, the Kalinga leader and martyr who opposed the building of a dam that would inundate the ancestral lands of the Kalinga. How can you own that which outlives you? world has changed, as it must. Indigenous Filipinos have changed with it. Listen to the stories of Filipinos with indigenous roots. Theirs is a story of both diaspora as well as cultural resilience. No matter where in the world they are anchored by blood, memory, heritage, and culture to their indigenous roots.
When I was young, I used to go with my parents because my parents were farmers. We used to walk all the way and we used to gather sweet potatoes, vegetables from the farm. Whenever our neighbor is going to harvest the rice and rice paddies, we go and help the same way around. We help each other, we take turns, and so this spirit of bayanihan or bandang, it makes us more united, and this unity among us bring us even though we are outside Ifugao.
I am a half Blaan. My late mom was a Blaan. I was born in Landan, Pulumulok, South Cotabato. With respect to the values that I learned from my old folks, from my Blaan folks, and how they inspired me and strengthened me and kept me grounded. One of them is respect, which is about listening and giving due regard to others, especially those that I have fundamental differences with. The second would be courage. It is to me standing up and speaking up to take on the challenges that when I see something that is wrong. Third would be equality, enjoying the same human rights and treating each of us the same, no matter who we are. And the fourth one would be achievement. It is very important, especially among indigenous peoples, that we get formal education. And that is our tool to be engaged more in the society. Fifth is consistency. So as a cultural advocate, I practice consistency in specific advocacies that I am engaged. I am proud that the Blaan is the first IP group of the Philippines with the two manlilikha ng bayan. These two, this is Puyat Bing and this is Bayes Telita. So they have elevated the Blaan indigenous peoples not only in the national level but also international when they became the national living treasures of the Philippines or Gamaba awardees. As a Filipino American, that I am not forgetting my roots and I am sharing it to my kids and for their next generations to know the beauty of our cultural diversity and that their mom is from the Blaan indigenous peoples group.
Here are noble Filipinos indeed, who carry on their shoulders both the trials and triumphs of their race, while negotiating their own journeys in a constantly changing world. Today, many Filipino artists have been inspired by the indigenous. Music, the visual arts, fashion, dance and movement. These modern expressions pay respectful homage to traditional culture. But there is much more that we must imbibe and learn. Independence has always been the birthright of our indigenous peoples. As they continue to fight for their right to survive, the lessons they share with us may also help us negotiate the changed world we live in. With respect for humanity's diversity, with unity and oneness of community, with a profound love for country and people. Maranao, Ifugao, Bagobo, Tiboli, Tausug, Kalinga, Yakan, Panay, Bukidnon, so many others whose cultures have enriched our country. We learn from them what it means to be rooted in the indigenous. We learn from them, these proudly independent Filipinos.